I joined the Marines in 1995. I deployed with them, I believe it was 97, 98, to Kuwait. Um, Spent some time there. When I got back, was involuntarily recalled due to 9/11, where I just spent a small time again with the Marines. And after that, in 2002, I joined the Army, did another 4 years, and then got out. Deployed with the Army in, was it 2002, um, to Iraq during OIF and what's called New Dawn now, I believe.
You wound up, or you said you wound up going through Spearhead, and you're kind of going back and forth between that and a few other places. Can you just kind of explain like why you were going through Spearhead so much?
Yeah, with the first deployment, during it was Desert Thunder, Desert Shield timeframe. With the Marines, we billeted at Spearhead and then worked at Kuwaiti Naval Base. And if we weren't working at the naval base, we were working at the airport, which is now um, Doha, I believe. It was Kuwaiti International Airport at the time. But I could be wrong on that. But regardless, during that time, Spearhead was pretty much the biggest and only base that could hold us. And so we did a lot of traveling from there back and forth.
What kind of supply runs were you doing through Spearhead when you went in with the Army during the initial invasion?
Right. So yeah, and then later on with the Army, of course, we went through Kuwait the same, into Iraq, and at the time I was working with the S1 office, but without much of a job, I was working with the S4, and we were making supply runs back and forth to Kuwait and back into Iraq, because of the lack of water. Honestly, MREs were fine at the time, but we went from 2 bottles of water a day to 1 bottle of water a day when the temperature's 130 degrees average, over there. And so it got to be pretty dire, to the point to where me and the S4, won't name any names, but we'd go into Spearhead quite a bit, and if there was a pallet of water there, man, I'm sorry to say, but we'd rip into it and take our fill, and it just became one of those things. As a matter of fact, we started making these trips so often. Um, I got upgraded to a 5 ton, where I could just hold more, and that was kind of our job at the time. Sorry to say, but times were challenging, and I had to say, I don't know. I got to put it out there. It wasn't easy to steal water, from other troops. But literally, when you're watching them take showers, right there at Spearhead with the big bladders on the 5 ton uh, trucks, you kind of make sense of it. You give yourself a pass. But yeah, we weren't getting a lot of supplies in for the first 3 months or so, or mail for that matter. And so me and the S4 would take a lot of trips back there. Had to do what you gotta do, I guess.
So you went through Spearhead, and there's already been a few other veterans who've talked about the conditions there being not really the kind of place that you would want to live. But uh, it, as you wound up spending more time overseas, did you wind up having any other types of exposures to anything toxic?
Yeah, well, with the Army there, I had a lot of burn pit experience. I got into some trouble with my E7, and as a punishment, I was put on what's called burn pit duty. And there's just nothing worse. I mean, you're literally steering tubs of feces and um, parts and radios and whatever you can, whatever there is to destroy, and you're mixing it with a mixture of gasoline and JP8 and what have you, and then just sitting there with a stick and making sure that it all burns. And at the time we got our most of our clothes off because it's hot outside and everything else, and we're just breathing it in. And yeah, it. I gotta say, I can't be for sure, but I do have like skin problems, and I have what's um, asthma from what they said. And, but I can't be sure, what it's from. But it just seems like something that toxic and that disgusting to the point to where now it's even uncomfortable to clean up, after the dogs even, I can't kind of deal with that mentally. I can only do so many restroom duties, I guess is what I could say. Um, and then, previously in the Marines, we were sent to Yuma to pick up a Harrier that crashed in the desert. And this was previous to all Desert Thunder, Desert Storm. Even then, we were out there one day picking up a Harrier that went down, and just from the debris and just from the toxicity of the sand around us, my team all got sick in the same matter of days. It was actually 7 and 8 days. We all, in the seventh and eighth day, we all got sick. We all got violently sick, and had to go to sick hall for it. And so I was just thinking, as I met you, that was my first interaction with the jet fuel and such like that. And it wasn't until years later that I'm sitting there mixing it in this burn pit, breathing in all these toxic fumes. And, it's just kind of no wonder we're having all these issues that, I mean, they call it exercise induced asthma, but to be honest, it doesn't happen when I exercise. I have my asthma attacks in strange situations, in little, when I smell certain chemicals and things.
You mentioned when you guys were clearing up that Harrier, the next day other people came in and they had more protective gear. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. Actually, you know, I have a little bit of guilt to this because as, you know, the squad leader at the time, I was just motivating my guys to sling up these what looked like engine parts and, get these cargo nets out and kind of start stacking these things up so that the next day the helicopters could come pick up our loads. And in the middle of the desert, we're, like I said, in t-shirts and such. And the very next day, when we go out there to actually get rid of the loads and bring in the helicopters, there's uh, officials or government officials of some kind. Not they didn't look like Marines in full-on chemical suits. The whole white suits, cover, hood, everything. The clear mask and everything. And they had demanded us to get out of there. Uh, um, but it was too late by then. We had already spent the whole previous day there. And so we were a little bit surprised. And when we went back, my staff sergeant at the time, he knew what exactly had happened. He knew we weren't properly prepped. And so he made it a point to complain, but I think it pretty much landed on deaf ears.
You said that your leadership or the staff sergeant had wanted it to be put in your guys' records when you went to sick hall. Did anyone ever do that?
No, no. Matter of fact, he his name was Staff Sergeant Jones, and his nickname was the Tasmanian Devil. He lit that place up because he was so upset that we were all so sick. He was sure that it was because of that jet cleanup. And as much as they eventually assured him that it would go into our record, it didn't. There's nothing in my record. And matter of fact, right afterwards, he continued fighting because he saw that it was in none of our records. Um, and then, after that, I don't know what happened. He eventually lost steam also, I imagine.
Is there anything that you would want to recommend or say to anyone who might be dealing with these kinds of issues?
Man, it's hard because you have to do what you're told. You know you shouldn't be inhaling these toxic things and yet you don't pay attention to the possible consequences that this may have on your life afterwards. But the suggestions I would give people is not to do it, but I know I can't tell them to disobey a direct order, but just be that guy that takes extra precaution, I mean, be that the one that everybody laughs at for wearing a gas mask, or, you know, by all means, don't disobey your direct order, but there's smarter, safer ways to do things, and I think during the time we used it, just in haste, we use what we have and to destroy, whatever we need to, and it just look at the damage it's done, just for not thinking it through. And this is just one thing, it's kind of irritating being this young with these many problems, and all for what? Because we could have wore a gas mask and, maybe we could have been healthy. It's too late for us, but if I could tell somebody else, do what you got to do to protect yourself, you know. My son just joined the Air Force, as a matter of fact. I'm worried about all the bad orders that might come his way, And I constantly have to tell him, just use your head. I know it's a bit of a stretch for Marines to say use your head, but you know, 22, it's after the fact, it's easier to see, I guess.